to at least 109 people who were in transit. Nearly 200 others were told not to board their flights headed for the U.S. All of this happening in less than a day since the president signed that travel ban. The American Civil Liberties Union, better known as the ACLU, filed a lawsuit against it. They released this statement saying, quote, "This ruling preserves the status quo and ensures that people who have been granted permission to be in this country are not illegally removed off U.S. soil."
Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want
A look at some of the protests that have been happening, protests at airports across the U.S. against Trump's executive action. Our Rachel Crane has this from JFK International Airport in New York.
Now, it's unclear exactly what that means, when the detainees here at JFK and across the country will be released, if they will be released at all. But what it does mean is that they cannot immediately be deported. Now, here at Terminal 4 at JFK, we know that 12 people were detained. We know that 2 of them, Iraqi men, they were involved in a lawsuit that was filed today. Both have been released. Also, over at Terminal 4, we know that about 7 people were detained. We had the opportunity to speak to some of the family members of those who were detained. One was the son of a 68-year-old woman from Yemen who was detained. She has diabetes. Her son was incredibly worried about her health and well-being. He was unclear if she had her medication, and he said he wasn't able to speak to her. Now, she was granted a green card, but yet was detained. Now, we spoke to another gentleman who was here on a student visa, getting a PhD in biochemistry. His wife detained. She was been granted an F2 visa. He told us that she was set to get back on a plane to go to Iran this evening. He said that he doesn't feel safe in the United States, and he probably, too, will return to Iran. But there has been an incredible protest here unfolding all day and all night. We've seen people actually pouring out of a garage that was behind us. An incredibly peaceful protest, people making their voices heard despite the cold. We've seen children, we saw babies, people with homemade signs, even projectors projecting on the side of the wall saying, "Refugees, we love you." Back to you.
Rachel Crane at JFK International Airport in New York. Just a reminder here about the president's travel ban. It bars people from 7 predominantly Muslim nations from entering the U.S. for 90 days. The map you see here shows the countries that are involved: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Libya, Yemen, and Somalia. The order also suspends the U.S. refugee admissions program for 120 days until so-called extreme vetting procedures are put in place. Syrian refugees are barred indefinitely. Also, people holding certain visas will now have to undergo in-person interviews in order to renew them. We're also getting some clarification as to exactly what will happen to those now covered by this emergency stay. One of the drafters of the motion to halt Mr. Trump's travel ban is telling CNN, quote, "The judge's order is that those with a lawful visa or green card not be removed from the U.S. It doesn't immediately order that they be released from detention." Teresa Cardinal Brown is the director for immigration policy at the Bipartisan Policy Center, a Washington-based think tank. She has some more insight on the legal ramifications to President Donald Trump's order and the stay.
The immigration law does give the president very broad authority to deny entry to immigrants or classes of immigrants based on any criteria that the president deems is a national interest. But there are other parts of the law, including laws that the United States is signatory to about protection of refugees and not sending people back to places where they could be subject to torture or persecution. And so basically that's what the courts are going to look at. They're going to look at what are the laws that apply here and which is the law that is superseding the other. So that's why I think this is going to play out. As I said, this is the first case. I can see other cases coming, not just for refugees, but, for example, the green card holders and for others. And some of this is you know, these executive orders were rolled out very, very quickly. They were rolled out without implementation plans in place at the agencies, so decisions are being made on the ground, on the fly, by people who haven't had guidance from above, and that's implicating how things are being carried out.
The Department of Homeland Security is working out how to apply this stay, saying in part, quote, "We are carefully monitoring the litigation. We will be analyzing it with our counsel, and we will certainly implement any appropriate orders accordingly." Earlier Saturday, the U.S.